Hey, this is Scott Bischoff for Detroit Lions Podcast. We are recapping the Week 3 game, the Detroit Lions loss at Minnesota 28-24. Stay tuned. We're coming at you right now. Okay, so Week 3, Lions travel to Minnesota. They lose a disappointing loss. Lots of stuff that went on in the fourth quarter of that game that just you'd love to have back. Lions came out. They came out pretty hot on offense. Looked like they had everything going. Vikings had a hard time stopping what the Lions were doing on offense. And Lions ran the ball pretty effective. Like we talked about in the preview, it was unrealistic to think that we were going to have, big, huge running plays. DeAndre Swift or Jamal Williams going for 50-plus yards. This was going to be a little more, just staying good down and distance, and the Lions did that for the most part. Pretty much the entire game. Jared Goff played really well. It's going to be a conversation that we're going to have or start thinking about at some point as the season wears on. Is there fear about Jared Goff playing like this and the Lions getting comfortable with what he is as a player and extending him? But that's perhaps a conversation for another time. Regardless, he played very well on Sunday. He had the Lions in rhythm. He targeted Amon-Ra St. Brown in this game like he has in other games, but he also went away from him at times. Now maybe that had something to do with Amon-Ra's injury, the ankle injury. Not really sure, but Josh Reynolds was a little more involved. The Lions offense looked good. They did not run. I don't think they looked as comfortable running the ball as they had in the previous 2 weeks, but I think some of that was the way the Vikings defensive front lines up and their linebackers, and some of the situational stuff that happened in the game where second and 6 is good, like we talked about in the preview. Allows them to run play action. And they did that their first couple drives. The Lions looked very efficient, very effective. The passing game looked in sync pretty much the entire game. Now, the Lions ran for 4 yards a carry. I want to say they ran it 35 times in that range. It was a bizarre game from a sense of you had both kickers look similar. Now, I don't know if some of that was because the windows were open and there was air in the stadium, and it was just making the long attempts look more difficult than they really were. But Minnesota had 2 misses from 56 yards, and they looked the same. They were both low line drives that went right. Austin Seibert, the Lions kicker, missed from 48 and obviously missed from 54 in the fourth quarter. Again, low line drive. The 48-yarder he missed hit the post pretty solid. It's a different game if that goes in. It didn't. So situationally, there's some things that happened on offense where, especially in the fourth quarter, it just looked like the Lions. We're going to talk about this. The decisions that were made. Just kind of contradicting one another. The Lions have been super aggressive with Dan Campbell as coach. They've gone for it on fourth down. They faked, punts. They faked field goals. They've done it all, and they went for it on fourth down a bunch in this game. And the one time, I know I'm jumping ahead. The one time that you really didn't want them. The one time you really wanted them to go for it on fourth down is the time they chose to kick a 54-yard field goal. And the reason why I say that you really wanted them to go for it is because that's a chance to end the game. You get fourth down, and I think it was 4th and 4, at that point. And I know it's, it's going to be a tough first down to pick up, but even, you got to wait it out. Like, so if you make the field goal, you're up 6 and you're kicking off and you're giving the ball to an offense that is an explosive offense that you've kind of hemmed in all day, but it's just a matter of time, right? So giving the ball back to that offense, to an offense, I think is just a bad idea. It's 4th and 4 if you pick up the first down with, I think it was, let me look at the clock. I want to say there was 1:15 left. Minnesota had no timeouts left. The game was over if you pick up first down there. And I think if Dan Campbell had a choice to make, he would never make that choice again in the same exact scenario. Just because if you do pick up the first down, the game is over. If you attempt the field goal and you miss, you give the Vikings a little bit more. You give them 7 extra yards. There was plenty of time left on the clock. It's not like with 1:15, a team can't drive down the field and score or kick a field goal. But I'm not sure that was so much in the equation for what he was thinking. The third option there would have been to punt and try to pin them deep. But even in that scenario, you're still giving the Vikings a chance to either come down and kick a field goal and get you into overtime, or to potentially win the game with a touchdown kind of thing. And of all the scenarios for me that where it played out, I would have preferred for them to go for it, because that had been their mentality the entire game, to just go for it on 4th down, be aggressive. It was the one time being super passive, making a very passive choice hurt them, and obviously hurt them big. So there were other situations in the game that were a little confusing. There was a 3rd down, and this isn't going to be bag on the Lions coaches kind of thing. It's just not. Do I think they could have made a better choice on whether or not to kick that field goal? Yeah. There were a few other situations that I think they could have done things a little bit differently. There was a 3rd and 1 with just under 11 minutes left in the 4th quarter where they took a vertical shot to Josh Reynolds down the field. To me, that's got to be. I understand it totally, and I think it's an aggressive play. I'm sure Minnesota thought they were running, and the Lions took a chance to take a shot down the field, and if you hook up, it's a huge play. In the end, they ended up. I think they punted on there, and you're up 10 at that point, so I don't hate the vertical shot there, but in hindsight, first down there would have been nice. The Vikings then come down and score a touchdown right away. So now it's a 3-point game, and the entire tone of the game is different. It changes. So there's that, and then obviously how things shook out in the end. But so offensively, I thought the Lions looked good. I thought that the passing game looked in sync and in rhythm. The running game didn't look as explosive, but again, we're dealing with a ton of injuries. Evan Brown played right guard for them instead of Logan Stenberg, and it's a different style. Stenberg is a mauler. He wants to come off the ball and just move dudes. Brown's more of a technician, and I think this is. If I had to guess, I don't know this for sure, but if I had to guess, I would think that Brown is much more competent in pass pro, and probably a lot better picking up blitzes and stunts and twists and that kind of stuff that you're going to see from a 3-4 defense. And my guess is that's why they went the way they went, with Evan Brown playing right guard. Evan Brown is a much better center than he is as a guard. I think he's a much better player in pass protection than he is moving guys, in the ground game. But so, in totality, I think the Lions offense played a reasonable game. I thought they looked good through 3 quarters, and then they just kind of got out of sorts in what they were doing. And Amon-Ra being hurt, it doesn't help. Swift being dinged up doesn't help, that kind of stuff. So that's a limiting factor going forward. Some exciting stuff on defense, and a little bit. I'm going to talk about Jeff Okudah matched up with Justin Jefferson, maybe in a different way than other people are talking about it. I know that there's, if you want to talk about safety help, that's fine. I think it's bad defensive design to not give safety help to any corner who's trying to cover Justin Jefferson. I just think that that's a bad idea. It's asking to get burned. And yeah, they did give him safety help, but what I saw from Okudah, which was the most exciting to see, is the way he bullied Justin Jefferson at the line of scrimmage and refused to allow him to get clean releases off the line of scrimmage. He made it very hard for Jefferson to get into his routes, which really disrupted the timing and the rhythm and the landmarks that Justin Jefferson needs to get to in that offense. And you can see how that was a problem for Kirk Cousins, where he was expecting Jefferson to be in one area or one part of the field, and because of the physicality of Okudah, Jefferson just wasn't able to get to that spot on the field. So yes, they gave Okudah some safety help, but why wouldn't you? And then, having said that, it was super impressive to watch Okudah refuse to be beaten at the line of scrimmage by Justin Jefferson. It was, it's everything that you could want to see from a cornerback who is going to cover another team's number one. So that's that. It's just, some people are gonna give the safety help too much credit without recognizing the way Okudah limited Jefferson and how he did it, and that's physicality. It's stepping up into his space and making it, getting his hands on him and making it very uncomfortable for him to get off the line of scrimmage. And that's really how Jefferson wins, is immediately in his route is winning at the line of scrimmage, getting into his routes, and then he's super tough to cover because he's both fast and quick. But if you're able to bully him, which Okudah did, and you could see some of that playing out in the game, you could see Okudah kind of getting in his way. There's a play where Okudah kind of is on the sideline, and he's just sort of walking with his hands up towards Jefferson, like, I'm not moving, and and I think he was really trying to get in Jefferson's head as far as the physicality, and it worked. I want to say he was targeted 6 times with Jefferson was targeted 6 times. I think Okudah gave up 3 catches for like 18 yards in the game to Jefferson. So incredible performance by Jeff Okudah. The Lions' defensive line looked. Alim McNeil played a really good game, which we should come to expect. The Lions just didn't generate a lot of pressure. They did generate some pressure, like stunting and looping inside. They brought Hutchinson inside a little bit and Charles Harris inside a little bit. But those are long developing plays where you're not beating an offensive tackle to the outside. You're kind of swimming back inside and then crashing through the A gaps to bring pressure on Cousins and not allow him to step up to make throws. But those are long developing pressures. That's where the Lions pressured Cousins in the game. Alex Anzalone had the only sack in the game. You have to give credit to Brian O'Neill and Christian Darrisaw, the Vikings tackles. They played really well, and they limited the edge players for the Lions, and it just didn't look like Hutchinson didn't look like himself. He didn't look as explosive or as powerful as he had in the first 2 weeks. We can say that's a little bit of the thigh injury, but some of the credit has to be given to the Vikings offensive tackles. They played really well, and it's strange because O'Neal's come a long way as a player. He was a project coming out, and Darisaw had significant flaws coming out of Virginia Tech. He played with a lot better balance and just more. He looked a lot more comfortable in the game last Sunday than I had seen him before. He looked good, and so did O'Neal. And there just wasn't a lot of pressure, for the Lions. So realistically, the Lions made it difficult on the Vikings offense because of the Vikings' desire to run everything through both Dalvin Cook, who did a good job running and kind of what we expected. But also the passing game is all about Justin Jefferson and getting him the ball and chunk plays, and they just didn't have that in the game. So, at a point through 3.5 quarters, it looks really good. You look like you're really limiting this offense, this explosive offense. And then next thing you know, 2 touchdowns later, you lose. Obviously, the significant lapse in the secondary on the touchdown to KJ Osborne, the one that put the Vikings up. Amani Oruwariye had a rough day. Looks to me like he's still a little banged up with that back injury. He didn't look as comfortable, on the move as he has at points last year, and even in week 1. He got a lot of. There's a lot of penalties. There's a lot of holding calls. That's a player who's not playing very confident. There's a lot of work to do in the back end there, and then losing Tracy Walker is just a brutal blow. The defense played solid just because of what Okudah did to Justin Jefferson. I thought Dalvin Cook looked good. I think there were times when the Lions gave him a little bit too much room to run. Which is, that's Dalvin Cook. You give him a little bit, and it's going to be a problem. And he may put himself in bad situations here and there with some of the vision issues. But every once in a while, it's not going to matter because he's going to bounce something, and it's going to be a big play. So I know people are going to want to talk about the timeout the Lions took after the first pass to KJ Osborne to get him into first down territory. I think it was, 50 seconds left. I totally understand it. The Lions looked out of sorts on defense, and I think they knew they were in trouble, and they were just trying to get it figured out. I think Dan Campbell talked about looking out there and feeling like his defense was tired and they needed a break. But they had just given up a big chunk play to KJ Osborne, and they needed to get on the same page, and obviously it didn't happen. It's a problem. Again, lack of pressure, conventional pressure, a lack of pressure from the outsides, not a lot of blitz pressure. Okudah played a great game against Justin Jefferson. He really did. Tracy Walker, losing Tracy Walker to the Achilles is the injury luck has just been brutal for a while. And now we enter a stretch where, after week 2, you think, wow, the schedule opens up and you beat Minnesota and things look really good. And, the reality is they should have won that game on Sunday. The circumstances around it are a little bit, disappointing. But they didn't play a bad game. They didn't play poorly. They just didn't play. They didn't play a great game. And honestly, I don't think the Lions have. I don't think the Lions have the horses to play an average football game and on the road against an interdivision rival and walk away with a win. And, they played pretty well through 3 quarters, but then some of the mishaps in the fourth quarter. Minnesota's a good football team. You're playing in their building. They do have explosive players. It's, as I was watching it, I just thought, the quicker this game can end, the better, because it's just a matter of time before there's a huge play against this defense, because there's just too much time. So we have to give credit to the Vikings for making plays at opportune times, and some of the play calling opening things up for their offense. Adam Thielen got going. Osborne didn't do much. I know that Irv Smith is a good player. He's a good tight end. He's a good receiver. So it's a disappointing loss because it should have been, starting the fourth quarter, you're up 10, and you have opportunities to both score and get a first down to end the game, and you don't do either, and you lose because of it, and it's just a disappointing loss. So that's the wrap up. It's there's a lot of anytime you lose, you're going to look back on things. I don't think anybody's going to really question all that much if the Lions are able to stop the Vikings and win the game. Yeah, we're going to look at it and think, oh, that's a confusing. Some of the decisions that were made are confusing because they're not aggressive. When we've been super crazy aggressive with our the Lions have been very aggressive with their decision making, and then okay, let's kick a field goal that we know we really realistically aren't going to make. It's a strange choice, but some of the injuries are piling up. We're going to do a preview of this coming game. We'll talk about the injuries that they're dealing with right now. Things are gonna get pretty vanilla on offense, and I know there's just not much else to say about a loss the way you lose that game. As frustrating as it can be, we shouldn't be off of the Dan Campbell bandwagon. We just shouldn't. It's he's got to learn from this kind of stuff, and I'm sure he will. I'm sure that he's going to regret how that played out, and regret the missing the opportunity to put faith in his offense to put a knife in to Minnesota's defense and win the game, end the game. So that's a breakdown for week 3. It's a frustrating, strange loss. Realistically, a game they should have won, but on to week 4. We'll see you in a couple days with the preview for the week 4 matchup against Seattle.